we are going to be breaking down my top watch list pairs for the week, going over forex, the stock market, and anything else that maybe pop into my head. Oh yeah, crypto as well. So we will make sure that we go over that because I think crypto is at a very key level right now across the board. So let's get into it. Let's start with Aussie USD using the supply and demand methodology of areas where we want to be looking for buying and selling opportunities. I have a lot of these zones already drawn out to keep an eye on. But right now, Aussie USD sitting up here with this daily supply zone. I really like this zone. It's this massive pivot point that did manage to make a new low in the market, as well as if we pop over to the weekly time frame. It's also a pivot point. The leg out might not be the greatest, but that's why we are taking the extreme here, right? So we pop down to the daily. We can see this is really where the whole imbalance started. So that's really where I want to be drawing my zone. Understand if price does get up there, you will be trading counter trend. So maybe you want to take precautions as in smaller risk and quicker take profits. Okay. And then for demand, I think we will get some buyers coming in down in this area. But right now, it looks like we have price sitting inside this 4-hour rally-based drop supply zone. I like this area. We were watching it last week. We went over it in the private group saying, hey, keep an eye on this whole area. We might get some type of reaction. It's got a good imbalance. But now keep an eye about what's been going on over the last 2 days or so. Because prices rallied right before this zone. It started base, rally, came back down for another base, and then rallied up. And in fact, it went deeper into the zone. Now, it's still only really tested once, but now where we might see buyers coming in is back down of where prices started from. So if we go down to the 1 hour, we will see like, hey, prices came up, touched it, pulled back, might have given some people a sell setup, totally fine. But then really what happened here was the buyers took full advantage and they pushed price deeper up into the zone. So clearly, if prices do pull back, you know what? I will look for buyers to potentially step in back down in this general area to potentially push price back up because now we have higher highs, higher lows, right? So there is some weight to this area of this demand zone. Okay, so I think maybe scalping some buys down here on lower time frames is valid, but just be aware of how far prices have come up. But if there is a selling opportunity up in here, I definitely need to see this whole thing being removed first. Okay, kind of like what it did over here, well, how it kind of broke this momentum, removed this area of demand. Something like that, I need to see this being removed. Till then, there's not much profit margin. And I think if we pop over to the New Zealand USD, we might get the same thing. They're going to be moving as the exact same New Zealand Aussie move, a lot like the same. So we had prices come up, test it, rally up, drop, then came deeper into the zone. So we will see that on a 1 hour time frame. We will see prices rally up, drop, and then push price higher up into the zone. So we kind of have this overall momentum to the upside, right? So not much profit margin for selling opportunities. For me to be selling, I definitely need to see a very strong move to the downside and removing all this area of demand. Okay, maybe if you want to take some scalps on a 1 minute and all that, sure. 1 minute, 5 minute. But probability based, the pressure is still up to the upside, okay? And we might have some buyers trying to come in over here. I think there will be another example that we will get into talking about this exact scenario. Okay, so let's go to USDCAD. This was a major chart that we were watching last week in the group. I think overall we had this daily area of demand here. It's a major pivot point, right? Prices dropped all the way down, rallied up, created a new high in the market. So when prices were coming back down into it, we said, okay, hey, I really like this whole area for buyers to step in. We got higher highs, higher lows. We got a very strong move to the upside. So I think it's cool to be looking for buying opportunities, but let me see if we can tighten this whole daily zone up because it's a pretty wide base. So usually what I do is I drop down to smaller time frames and I see, okay, is there a chance that I can tighten up the zone? And this is the 4 hour extreme of the daily. And we could honestly tighten it up to be even tighter like that. I think one of our guys, Muhammad, he captured a 5 minute long in here. So he was trading using that 4 hour daily as his highest time frame. He was waiting for that trend line to be broken, waiting for this pivot point to be removed. And then he was buying the pullback down into there. So he bought this right here, back into that demand zone, right? So really good higher time frame story about why he's getting long, right, sitting inside higher time frame, then waiting for buyers to step in, showing them evidence. So I like that. I still like the idea of looking for buying opportunities if prices pull back into that area, if they show any new ones. But right now we're kind of near the extreme, so I don't see maybe too many opportunities coming down. I think if prices drop, I like this area down in here on the 4 hour. Really good leg out. So I think it's cool to be looking for buying opportunities, but being aware that, hey, the trend is in a downtrend on the 4 hour. So your profit margin is a lot smaller, and maybe taking profits and smaller risk is recommended. Okay. Another one I want to talk about is US 100. I think this is a pretty interesting chart. NAS 100. We got to go over that. You know, interest rates came out saying that they raised them to, was it 0.05? So we got a big rally for the last 4 or 5 days coming from the stock market. We pop over here to the daily. We're beginning to see evidence of buyers coming in now, right? Overall, I think we're still pretty much in an overall downtrend, but we have started to see evidence of buyers coming in. We had 4 very strong days of buyers coming in. We have begun to remove this area of supply. We have broken downward trend lines. We had a really strong close here. So originally what I like to see is this daily demand zone down in here. I think taking the whole zone straight up, this is a trade idea that I'm watching. I think the whole zone is pretty good in general. But I think I would like to go down to like a 4 hour time frame and see if I can pick the extreme of it. Now, for day trading, scalping, I think looking for selling opportunities anywhere up here, anywhere up here, anywhere up here is what I will be doing. So if price comes anywhere up into those areas, and then on lower time frames, I will look for selling opportunities. But if we go down to that 4 hour, you know, we start to see that evidence of buyers coming in. This was, I think I made a video on this one talking about the long trade I made on US 30 or the NASDAQ 100, a trade review sitting in that 4 hour zone, and then I captured a 30-minute trade. I'll pop that open on the screen. So it's the same thing down here, but just on a higher time frame overall, right? So I like this area down in here. Okay. The US 2000 overall just been playing a range, right? This is a very ranging, I guess you could say, indice, because look on the daily time frame, it was in a range for like a year and a half, all last year in 2021. Finally broke out, fake out, and then broke down to the downside. So we're kind of starting this sideways range again. But if we do see a massive rally throughout stocks, we're probably going to continue to see this thing go to the upside. But right now, what I have in my charts is really this sideways range. So I like looking for selling opportunities on smaller time frames anytime that price is high up on this sideways range, right? And then buying opportunities anywhere down in here. But if we see a massive rager up into the stock market, well, we're probably going to see the stocks, the US 2000, this overall supply resistance start to break. So I'll be looking for selling opportunities primarily, probably not something I want to be buying right now. On lower time frames, given the higher time frame location of where price is right here. So I like this area for selling. Another one that I like is, this is the other one I wanted to talk about, is understanding the story of the higher time frame. Euro pound, I think overall we can clearly see this thing, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, right? We've got a massive move to the downside, pulls back, massive move to the downside, pull back, continuing on and on and on, right? So we've talked about this zone being a critical zone to be holding potentially. It's the last area to really push prices down and continue that downtrend. So if prices pull back up into the area, I 100% love looking for selling opportunities with prices up into this area. You just kind of look at the general price action. Let's imagine you got 100 pip moves to the downside, and then you got like 75 pip moves to the upside, then 100 pip moves to the downside, then 75. So something like that. So definitely with prices back up into here, I think you got a higher time frame story. We've been watching it for the last like week, 2 weeks with prices back up into that area. Now, what I see here is there was some evidence on like 4 hour time frames of potential shorts. I definitely see, you know, a 4 hour uptrend being broken. Maybe there is a 1 hour supply zone up in there, but this is what I was talking about on Aussie USD and New Zealand USD, understanding if prices are making higher highs, higher lows, going deeper into your zone, right? So it's never a good sign when prices touch your zone, pull back a little bit, then pushes deeper, pulls back, pushes deeper. We're kind of creating a new floor for buyers to come in. So I think for scalping in lower time frames, I think it's totally valid to be looking for buying opportunities down in here. I think it's lower probability, but this overall level has been holding, right? It pushed up once here, pulled back, pushed up, made a higher high, pulled back, pushed up, made a higher high, going deeper into the zone. So that's never a good sign when you're looking for selling opportunities on a higher time frame. You got a really good higher time frame story of why you should be looking for selling opportunities, but this pressure is still to the upside on the lower time frames, right? So not the best evidence of sellers really coming into the market yet. So really, I want to see this whole area being removed before I start looking for selling opportunities. It's this whole demand pivot point that's holding prices, pushing up higher and higher into it. So it's something I'm going to be waiting on, but I think it's totally valid if somebody came and said like, hey, I'm going to be buying in here. I mean, they're not wrong, right? This is a very, very strong move. This is just understanding different time frame analysis. And, if you're using this as your higher time frame of 1 hour, then all you're really interested in is holding a trade for a couple minutes to, 20, 30 minutes, right? Maybe if you want to have multiple take profits, okay, then you might stretch it to a couple hours, right? But if you're using 1 or 2 take profits, then you're probably going to be in this for, 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe to an hour to 2 hours. Aussie yen, this is definitely going to be counter trend, but if we pop over to the weekly time frame, we can clearly see that it's sitting inside this really nice weekly supply zone. Pretty good imbalance that did remove demand over here and over here. Now understand that any shorts will be counter trend. Clearly this thing is in a uptrend. You could draw trend lines like that, whatever you want to do. I think it's a no-brainer to say that this thing is in an uptrend, right? So shorting will be counter trend. Smaller risk is recommended, as well as smaller take profits, and I need to see evidence. We've had 3 very, very strong days of going straight up, so potentially looking for a pullback, but it's definitely too early. I need to see this thing having a major drop like that. And then it's like, okay, you know what? I do like that selling opportunity. I think you have a good higher time frame story of why you're looking for selling opportunities using the weekly, but right now it's just not a good thing to be buying, in my opinion. So I'll be waiting to see, and that's something that I'll talk about in the group. Pound New Zealand, we got 2 more. We're going to do Pound New Zealand, and then we will go over, Litecoin and cryptos because it's an interesting pair right now. Pound New Zealand weekly time frame, this would be more of a swing trade idea. I think if we pop over to the weekly, we can clearly see this thing in an overall uptrend. We got this major pivot point area of demand that pushed prices all the way up here. So with prices back down, it's been falling for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row. I like buying here or looking for buying opportunities if price presents an opportunity. I think you would be bouncing off of this momentum as well. You are reacting inside this weekly demand that pushed prices all the way up. I just have to see evidence of buyers coming in, and right now I haven't seen it. This is what I was referring to last week in the meeting, in the private group, saying what I want to see is this zone being removed before I start buying, but I need to see a very strong move to the upside. I don't want to see grinding, and that's really what we got. I think this was last week in the meeting saying, hey, I need to see this to be removed first before I start buying. But we never really saw a strong indication of buyers coming in. We just kind of grinded up like this, like 50% candles slowly going up, right? Think about it. If there was a really strong imbalance, do you think prices would go like this to the upside? Or do you think it would slowly grind up like this, right? If there's a serious imbalance between buyers and sellers, it would make this type of move, okay? So not a big fan of what price has done so far. It's more of a weight game for me, so I'll keep an eye on that. So before we get into crypto, we just have to have a quick look at the volatility index. It is very important to have a look at this every single week just to see where you are. Typically when it's higher volatility, maybe I like to drop down to higher risk. Maybe my trading performance drops overall. And then when in lower volatility, I could put on higher risk. And overall, that's when I perform better as a trader. So I have these marked out in the oval sections of where the typical low volatility areas are. So right now we do have price inside the just coming into the lower portion of the oval of the volatility index. So we might see another day or two of volatility dropping, pushing stocks higher, right? But if it completely collapses and drops, then this is the next floor of lower volatility that I have marked out. Okay, so if we pull up a chart side by side one another with the S&P 500, you'll start to see the correlation of the volatility index and the stock market. So I have here on the right S&P 500. Up here on the right, you can see this is really where stocks began to really fall off. Okay, and you look on the left-hand chart, the VIX, that is when the VIX started shooting up, okay? Then we had a rise into the stock market for 4, 5, 6 days. What happened? The volatility index started to drop during that time, and then we began to have another sell-off in the S&P, which then occurred in the volatility index as rising volatility, okay? So then over the last 5 days, we have seen the volatility drop. All right, and what happened in the stock market? We begun to shoot up. So you can definitely start to see there is a correlation with this. So like I said, here on the S&P, that's where we might get some sellers coming in, or if not, maybe up in here and up in here. So those are my general areas for the S&P, areas that we might see some sellers coming in, as well as the correlation with the volatility index. If price begins to fall on the volatility down to this section, 14, 15 territory, then we're probably going to see the stock market back up into the 4,500 area up in here. So let's get into crypto now. One of the main things I wanted to talk about was Litecoin. Really interesting zone. Pop over to the daily. No, I need to go to my crypto tab. I have it all drawn out. Litecoin and EOS will be interesting. We've seen this major support line being drawn out on Bitcoin and Monero and a lot of other cryptocurrencies. So we're going to see the exact same thing on the smaller cryptos, but Litecoin is pretty interesting. It's one of the major ones out there. Major support and demand line holding. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times it's been holding, right? It's like, there's a funny picture that somebody posted in the group. Let me show it. Chit chat. Shout out to Mohammed. BTC, $40,000 support. This man carrying this big old lady. So that's basically the major support line that's holding crypto. And if we see that break in Bitcoin, we're probably going to see this thing break in a lot of other cryptos as well. So I definitely like this area for buying opportunities, but I just haven't seen anything too interesting. I think buying on smaller time frames is higher probability, but this thing is still pressure to the downside, right? We still got, somewhat downward momentum line, trend lines holding. For me to say I really like it, I need to see a move happening to the upside and then pull back and then use this as, support, right? Start to remove these pivot point areas, rally up, pull back, use it as support, then I think it's very bullish. But if prices break down, I think we're going to see a lot of people trying to sell this thing as resistance. So it's at a really interesting level right now. I think a lot of moon boys are going to be watching this thing to say, hey, it's going up. Or a lot of bearish people are going to say, hey, it's going down to the ground. Honestly, what I could also see is like a lot of fake out. You could sucker a lot of people into this Litecoin market right now by dropping all the way down, then spreading panic in the market, and all for it to rise and go all the way back up to like 180, 160, further on to 300. It could happen if Bitcoin goes on a major run, but I think you'd get a lot of people scared, closing their positions and get out of the market and make room for the whales to step in, stop all those people out, and just shoot it through the moon, right? I don't know. It definitely could happen. I think a lot of people are watching this area, so it makes sense to be doing something like that. We have seen that. EOS is the same thing weekly. It's just been holding this major area of support. So same type of thing on EOS. We go to Monero. This was a main thing that I was talking about before. Major support. We finally broke it, pulled back. Let me go XMR USD. I think I still, okay, I thought I had everything still drawn up on it. I guess I don't. We broke it, became resistance, tested it, dropped, tested it again, dropped. We finally broke it above. Now people are kind of using this as support now. So we're at that choppy phase of what's kind of going on. So it's really at an interesting point in time. If you guys wanted to learn more about this trading and how I'm trading the supply and demand methodology, I recommend checking out moneyballtrading.com. I have a free training there, as well as if you go to my tips playlist, go to my YouTube, click tips, and it's a whole breakdown of the whole supply and demand, part 1, part 2, part 3, as well as breaking everything down into like smaller little videos. And if you guys want to reach out to me on social media, you guys totally can. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Moneyball Austin. If you guys disagree with any of my analysis, let me know. If you think crypto's going down, let me know. If you think crypto's mooning, let me know. All right, have a good one, guys. Cheers.